Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Creating Tailwinds Podcast by FlightPath Financial with your hosts, John Urbick and Jared Adams. Join us today as we discuss the power of infinite banking. And here we go.
Hello there, John. How are you, sir?
I am doing great, Jared. Thank you for asking. Busy week this week. Huh?
Busy week. Lots of travel. We're peak time, summertime, enjoying time with the fam. But goodness, the work still has to continue. So it's always something. But yeah, busy week. Got a little travel up ahead to Montreal this week.
Fantastic. Yeah, we just had Veronica's shower here. Veronica's getting married in November, and so had a house full of ladies. So I had to get out and get a bunch of things done.
So the ladies flood the house, and that means the honey-do lists are running strong, and you got to get out and help out where you can.
Oh, I add to them. Yeah, but it was all good. It was great to see everybody. My daughters were in town, and my daughter-in-law and the babies were in town. So it was great to see everybody.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad you got that time with them.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I had a conversation that was had recently, and I wanted to share it with you and get your shake on it. I had a gentleman who is 62 years old, and he's been through cancer twice. He said, Jared, I read this book. I really like it. I love what IBC is not only teaching, but the concepts that are there. He's like, but I've been through cancer twice. He's like, I'm uninsurable. And I responded to him, but it wasn't what everyone would normally think about insurance for a 62-year-old. So I wanted to get your shake on it and see what you thought on how you might respond to that, or what some of the options are.
Well, that's an interesting case, and it's not unique. There's a lot of people out there, as you can imagine, that are similarly situated. And first, don't give up the ship. It does not mean you're not insurable with those circumstances. It just means you have to put some time between once you're declared cancer-free.
Yep.
5-7 years usually down the road, you can look at insurance again. So even if a guy is 61, it doesn't mean you can't do IBC later. But in the interim, you certainly can. If you're not insurable, you just need to find somebody with insurable interest, a spouse, child, a business partner, somebody that you have a financial relationship with. Sure. There's a lot of different ways of structuring an infinite banking contract. But the big thing is you want to be the owner. And you can be uninsurable and the owner of a life insurance contract. Remember, there's three parts. There's the life, there's the owner, and there's the beneficiary. And two of those three have to be the same person to take advantage of the tax advantages of an IBC structured contract.
Sure.
So,
but you could still do IBC even if there was three different people covered there, right? If I was the owner and my daughter was the life protected and my wife was the only beneficiary, let's say I was no part to be involved there, we could still do an IBC style contract with that, right?
You can. It's just preferable to have two of the same, like the life and the owner might be the same person,
sure,
and the beneficiary would be somebody else.
Yep.
Yes, you can, but that's a whole other discussion. But I would say if you can, you want to have two of the three the same of those three parts.
That makes sense. So the 62-year-old gentleman that's had kind of a rough shake, he doesn't have to give up. Like,
no,
there's lots of options. You talked about, you've got options in terms of maybe there's a different insurable interest. What would that look like? How would the insurance company approach that? When they say, Mr. John Doe, you'd like to create this policy for your daughter, like, a lot of folks might see that as weird. Like,
no. What they're going to do is they're going to ask you if the parents, in that case, if the parents have life insurance, at least one of them, the father, the mother, somebody should have life insurance before you're buying it for the child. And that's just, remember, insurance companies are all about risk analysis, and they're going to scratch their heads, just as you said, and say, well, why are you getting it on your children? You don't even have it on yourself. You're the breadwinner. Right. You're the one, or if maybe you're even a stay-at-home mom. You could be. Your services to the family are enormously expensive.
That's right.
When you monetize that, the cost of a mom staying at home is an enormous sacrifice,
Yep.
and
Or
that's
stay-at-home dad. We've got
or
there's plenty
stay
of
at
those out there too,
exactly,
right? Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. And there's a lot of folks doing that, and you've got a huge cost to replacing what you do every day.
Couldn't agree more, Jared. Of
Yeah.
course,
Yep.
yeah. There's the family structure is a unit going forward, right? So
Yep.
there's a cost to every part of that. So yes, you ought to have life insurance to cover the any tragedy that could have happened, and they do happen. I mean, that's why uh, we structure these things as we do.
Sure.
So life
So,
insurance is one component, but
yep.
the cash value, the reason we use the life insurance contract is quite a bit different.
Right.
So we don't build primarily for the death benefit, although the death benefit backstops all of the transactions that we're doing inside the contract.
That's right.
But no, it's an exceptionally smart thing to have permanent life insurance for the mom, for the dad, and actually for the kids too, because you never know later on in life if they're going to be insurable. We have some in my own family that are not insurable,
Sure.
but they had insurance. What my dad did, it predated their medical issues, and so yes, it's a very, very smart thing, and it's cheaper, much less expensive to insure children early on, even when they're toddlers, than it is later in life. Why? Because of mortality costs.
Yep.
The older we get, the closer we are to our end game, right?
That's right.
So it just makes sense. And while you're preventing or preparing for that and planning ahead, we need money while we're living, not when we're dead,
Yeah.
frankly. And
Yep.
so
Our
to
need for
have the
capital is
access,
greater while we're alive than when we're dead, right?
exactly,
Yep.
having access to that capital is so important,
Yep.
so important.
Well, that's interesting. So, we had said that there was, um, a concept of having an insurable interest. That could be a spouse, a partner, a child. It could even be parents, depending on, maybe you had a rough shake at 25 years old and you had a really, really hard health experience and you're uninsurable in that regards. Your 50-year-old parents could also be considered insurable interest. Is that you go down the right path on that?
Oh, absolutely right.
Yeah.
Or
Yep.
what if you're helping to take care of your parents? What if they're relying on you?
Yeah.
That would be a case where you would justify more insurance for you. Conversely, if they're helping you out, they have a debt owed to you for whatever reason, you could have life insurance on them.
Uh,
So there's many different structures, of course, but
sure. And I know
all
we
you have to
could,
do is find an insurable interest, and if you don't know if there's an insurable interest for the folks that are listening, give me a call, give Jared a call. We'll show you the pathway to get this done. It's done all the time.
yep.
It's a great utility. It truly and truly is, and something that we both hope that you'll take a hard look at because most people don't. I mean,
Yeah.
internet banking is brand new to so many people, and that's what Jared, I think you'd agree. We're out here trying to educate the public what's going on and why this is so important.
Yeah, it's definitely that in itself is a task, right? Because you can tell that it's starting to catch some steam and it's moving. Folks, even if they don't know about it, have heard about it, they end up not having um, either the best information or they've heard all about the talking points that are on the other side, which is, buy term, invest the difference, and all this other stuff that you may fall into. You get all the opposite talking points. So it is a bit of an uphill battle, but it's a battle that I'm very much interested in terms of there's so much information and so much to learn that one of the big points that stuck with me on Nelson's book was never arrive at the destination of learning. I that one really hit close to home with me. My grandfather, who's well into his 80s now, and thank God he's still alive and still around with us, he always used to joke about going back to college. And this was my grandfather. He's like, 60 years old, 60 plus years old. He's close to retirement. He was always talking about going back to college. And that always just kind of resonated with me. He never did, but he was a constant student. He was always learning. And so that really resonated with me. And that's what I want to be as well. I want to constantly learn. I want to always pick up new things and learn new processes. And that's why this has been so enjoyable for me personally. But then it's a scenario where when you've seen the information and you've been able to digest it and you've read it and seen some different sides of it, you're able to, have a conversation about that. And it doesn't have to be a conversation that's one of confrontation. It's just asking questions and just, well, what did you think about this scenario? Or what did you think when this happened? And you just get the other person's, feedback on that. And it doesn't always go in the direction that I want or that I think is correct. But that doesn't mean that person's bad. I'm willing to have a conversation anyways. So I don't know. I kind of went off on a tangent there, but the idea of just being able to get this information out there and talk about it, the fact that anybody would be willing to talk about it would be just amazing to me, because that's the stuff that I enjoy.
It's funny you say this because, I wasn't thinking about this earlier. It just came to mind. I was listening to another a podcast. This guy runs around interviewing multimillionaires, and how did you do it? He's a young kid, and he's become very successful at it. And I listened to one clip of his, and he introduced, and I wish I remembered the man's name, but he interviewed this one guy, and he said, "What about the adage? It's not what you know, it's who you know that really counts." And the guy stopped him. He goes, "No, that's not really true." He goes, "You want to be the guy that everybody wants to know." He goes, "You want to be that guy. You don't want to know somebody because
That's right.
they have the information. You want to be the source of that information." He goes, "Work hard, study, know the material, never stop learning." Exactly what you were saying. You want to be that person, that guy or that gal that people are going to say, "Hey, I got a question. Who should I talk to?" Talk to Jared. Talk to John. Talk to the person who's listening to this podcast. You want to be that person. You don't have to know all things, but in your space, become an expert. Know everything about what you do. And pretty soon, you're the go-to guy or gal.
Funny how that works, right?
Yeah,
I know that
amazing.
guy you're talking about, the social media.
Yeah,
He's
I wish,
really
and I
interesting.
apologize to him because I'm sure he listens to us, but
Well, he always you
I
can
just
always
can't
tell
remember his name.
he catches folks off guard, right? And then he's like asking these great questions, and within two questions, they're like, "Wow, this guy's pretty smart." And then they just keep talking and they just spill the beans. So, kudos to him for his, not only persistence but his personality to make that happen.
Exactly right.
Yep.
Exactly right.
One other thing that we left out when we were talking about insurable interest, and this could be a fork in the road on two different very complex pathways. We've talked up until this point mostly about the family, the unit that you've got at home and how you might protect that. But
Right.
your business partner of a business that you're a part owner of is also a really important part of what could show as an insurable interest. Now,
Absolutely right.
like I said, they're not structured any differently in terms of how the IBC policy would be structured, but from the back end on who owns it and what the interest is, that does see some different structure, in the paperwork and how you would apply with the insurance company. But the policy looks exactly the same. You're still
Right.
building an asset through a life insurance policy of which your business or your business partner can loan against those cash values. And what
Yes.
other perfect example when you talk about the need for cash flow and the need for capital at crunch times? Business owners understand that among anybody. They know what that looks like and how hard that can be with payroll that might be coming through, or they just paid for a huge order and their payroll's tight, and then they still got to keep the lights on. Like, these are all just minor issues, yet they become a huge issue when you're a business owner.
Yeah, and you could even structure this fold it into another situation where something happens to one or the other partners in this
Yep.
business, or
Yep.
maybe there's more than one, and they want to keep control of that company without having to. I mean, it might have a wonderful spouse on one side or the other, but not a perfect business partner.
All right.
So there's something called a buy-sell agreement. So you could structure a buy-sell agreement with an infinite banking contract. I shouldn't say contract, infinite banking structured life insurance contract. So you could use it for banking and structure it so that in the unforeseen eventuality that something happens, one partner or the other, the surviving partner, could keep control of the company without having to take directional advice from somebody who may not be in a position to give good advice, but may want to. So that
Sure.
could be difficult. but
And
you also want to respect the investment and the time put in by your partner and his care
exactly.
for his spouse. So it's a way that you can take care of them financially and at the same time use this thing for your ongoing business expenses. It's
Yeah.
a beautiful structure.
Yep. I was going to say, and you're respecting the time and the effort of the graduated business partner for
Exactly
all
right.
the time and effort that you've both put into this. There is still something to pass on as their spouse is no longer involved and they're no longer involved in the day-to-day business, but they were able to you know walk away with something, even though that doesn't exist anymore. Which that's a beautiful piece in itself that someone or something could think that far ahead to just have the foresight on that. So, you know,
Right.
but so those
Well,
business partner type of agreements, those are also available in the event of that you're talking about being uninsurable.
right. One thing we didn't touch on, and let me just
Yep.
put it out there for
Sure.
those who may not be aware of it, is, what if you want to set up one of these things? You're not insurable, but your wife is, and so, or your husband is, one way or the other. How does that work? Well, the non-working spouse generally is limited, or the lesser income generating spouse is limited to half the amount of insurance that the primary breadwinner is. Just as a rule of thumb, this is not a hard and fast rule. It's just a rule
Sure.
of thumb.
Yep.
So what if I try to get some insurance and my wife is a stay-at-home mom, or she works on the side, but I make more money than she does, right? Or
Sure.
vice versa. The
Sure. Yep.
first 6 years of marriage, my wife made way more than I did, but
As
that's
a
just the
former
way.
regional pilot, I empathize with that.
Yeah, we've all seen those days, right?
That's right.
But the point I wanted to make is the insurance companies will look at if the primary breadwinner is not insurable, they will extend, oftentimes, they will extend that insurability number to the spouse. So that
Sure.
can be done even though their own income might not justify it, but together the couple's income does. And so that's just important consideration to understand.
Yeah.
Look, you're
So
not locked out if that
just
happens to you.
just to make sure I'm hearing that right, I want to just restate it and say it maybe a little different way. So what you're saying is typically, we're not talking about any uninsurable path. Typically, the insurance company would like to know based on the primary breadwinner's income and age, they're going to want to look at that and say you could be insured up to this amount, and yet here's where you are. You're currently insured at this amount, and they'll typically extend about 50% of the breadwinner's insurability or how much they currently have insurance on. If the husband has got $1 million out on insurance, they're typically not going to extend much more than 500,000 to a
That's
stay-at-home
correct.
spouse. Is that correct?
That's correct. But
So
let's say the
50%.
husband applies for,
Yep.
or flip it around for it. Let's say the wife is the maid breadwinner. Say she's got $1 million application in there
Yep.
for life insurance,
Yep.
and she's not insurable. And the husband's a stay-at-home dad, so he's not eligible for
In
the
terms of
number that
income.
she's eligible
Yep.
for by
Yep.
virtue of income.
That's right.
And so now the insurance company will look at giving him the $1 million of death benefit.
Right. Yep. Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so they're looking at it more on a household standpoint. We said a typical scenario, but if one person is uninsurable, then they'll look outside the box with you as well.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I know some people have that question and I
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
make sure it was out there.
That's right. Yeah, we kind of when we get to uninsurable, we kind of skip over a really important part that's in the middle that can be complex and can be confusing, but there's something that the insurance companies will use as well called table ratings. You know, if
Yes.
you
Oh,
know
very good point.
we hear often about, oh, I got super preferred, or I got standard tobacco, or whatever the rating is. But when you go beyond those standard ratings that they already have, there's
Right.
a long list of table ratings. Some companies may have, from A all the way to double Z. It's just how the company has it set up. It's where whatever their tables are that they refer, and the table ratings in themselves move from, if they're using that A to Z rating, where A is just barely missed the standard non-tobacco rating type of a setup, or you go all the way to double Z, where the person's had, literally had cancer 6 months ago, and they're at very, very high risk in terms of the way that the insurance company looks at their life.
Well,
So
let me
go
define
ahead.
table. Let me
Sure.
define table real
Sure.
quickly. a table rating. You have the normal risk charts that you were just talking about, Jared. The
Yep.
table is a separate. They call them a table because it used to be a physical table, a booklet that they would open up and they would flip through it. Table
Right.
A, table B, table C,
Yep.
and I just had a client with a table D. Um, and there are ways around this. What it does is it reduces the amount of death benefit for the same premium dollar.
Sure.
And in this case, a table D will give you 25% of the death benefit that that same dollar would buy if the person was not table, just at a standard rating. But there are ways around this where in the insurance company have certain riders. Certain companies will allow you to work with them on a standard rating.
Yep.
They'll remove the table rating, but they're going to reduce some of those riders. And essentially, what they're doing is future liability. You don't have access to certain features of the policy. At the end of the day, it's the same darn contract. And give it a shot. Talk to Jared. Talk to me. And even if you think that you might have an issue, we probably can help you. So don't give up the ship. There's a lot you can do when you if you know what you're doing. If you're just slinging life insurance contracts out there for a commission, you're not going to know how to do this. But
Sure.
Jared and I do. This is something that we're trained very specifically on, and we can navigate it for you. And that is where you meet us is where the rubber meets the road. We're out there fighting for you, and we're out for your best interests. And I can promise you, every single time we treat every client like it's family. We work hard for you.
That's right.
So
Well, and
don't don't do this alone. Let us help you. You can always say no, but give us a shot at it
that's
because I
right.
think we can help you.
Well, and the common reaction in that, and I say common because I speak to pilots a lot, and that's the very type A personality in there. The common is, well, I couldn't get the best, so I don't want it. And it's like, well, hold on a second. Just step outside and think outside the box with me on this. Look at the one of the things that we make sure we will not do is when we build you a contract, it will not mech. I will not put together an IBC contract that has a modified endowment contract date at some point down the road in it. So if you're paying a little bit more for insurance as a table rated, can't you get more money into the policy? Our goal is to have access to the cash value, the asset.
That's
You know,
exactly right.
so just think outside the box for a second. You're going to put a little bit more into the insurance, but that means you've got more room to put cash into the policy because we said our need for capital is greater while we're alive than when
Yep.
we're not. So you're in a setup where you can put more in, and it has the ability to build that cash value in the same exact way that if you were some super preferred, whatever. So it's like I said, it's easy to go down that path of looking at the rating, but step outside to make sure you see the problem before you see the solution.
Jared, you're spot on, 100% right. It's exactly the way that people need to see this because that's why we're doing this. We're doing it for the banking function. The death benefit is secondary. It's just the chassis upon which we build an infinite banking concept styled life insurance contract.
Yep. Yep. Completely agree.
Yeah. So, well, look, should we give a preview of the next one? Access to capital during a crisis.
I love that. I think that's going to be next up on the hopper. How you access the capital in a bad situation, or what bad situation may be looming on the horizon. I love that. Yeah, let's give a little preview.
Well, that'll be our next one, ladies and gentlemen. That'll be an interesting topic. I'm looking forward to talking about it with Jared because we live in interesting times, and access to your money in your bank is not a done deal, believe it or not. And we're going to talk about some of those circumstances where it's really happened, where you couldn't get your capital,
That's
but
right.
we're going to
That's
show
right.
you how you can.
I love that. And
All right, with that, Jared, I know you have a busy day ahead, as do I. So, any closing thoughts?
no, well, yes. One last closing thought as we talk about, previewing the capital to, I'm sorry, the access to capital during a crisis. One thing to remember, a lot of folks are look peeling back the idea of what does it look like in the rate of return and what do all these things look like. If you take over the banking function, and you recapture the 34.5% that you were giving to the bank, all of that
Yeah.
return goes out the window. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at how you can create this capital availability in bad scenarios and how much you're already gaining by taking over the banking function. All of that other stuff is just gravy. That's just a cherry on top. So that's my closing thought for you.
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast we could do on that one, huh?
That's right.
Talking
That's right.
about all the money that you save in recaptured interest that you're paying everybody else. The whole
That's
reason
right.
we're doing this.
That's right. Amen to
So,
that.
all right,
Excellent.
sir.
Well, thank you,
Well,
John.
it was a pleasure talking with you this morning, Jared. You have a wonderful day, and everyone out there, you can reach us at flightpathfinancial.com. You can go to a Creating Tailwinds podcast, this one, and you can also go to Creating Tailwinds on TikTok. We're out there on TikTok, so we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your questions and any comments you might have on our work, and we'd love to meet you, Jared.
Thanks, John. Have a great rest of your day.
You too, Jared. Thank you.
Take care.
You too. We'd like to thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Creating Tailwinds podcast with your hosts, John and Jared. As always, we welcome your questions and critiques. You can reach us through the Contact Us tab at flightpathfinancial.com. Remember, it's all about how you think. As Nelson Nash has said about infinite banking, give it your close attention, and it can make a radical improvement in your financial future.